Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to MEDCO University for December 11th, 2012. Tonight, we're pleased to have as our guest U.S. Chemical. Tim Walsh, the Western Regional Manager, will be our presenter tonight. And tonight's topics, body filler. We all are fighting that battle in the shops of perhaps the race to the bottom to see who can get to be the cheapest in body filler. And tonight we'll see some examples of how that really may not be the cheapest way for shops to go. And in conjunction with that, tonight we'll also be talking about SprayMax and the opportunities that it presents to increase the productivity in the shop, get smaller parts, cut-ins, etc. out of the booth, and allow for the booth to be maximized in its usage and be able to do more repairs and more efficient repairs out on the floor. Just some logistical things. If you have questions during tonight's presentation, please don't hesitate to ask them. The way you would do that, if you move your mouse to the top of your screen, you'll see a small toolbox drop down. And in that toolbox on the right, you'll see a square that says chat. That will bring up a chat box, and you can type in your question and send it to the panelist. We'll have visibility to those questions, and we'll stop Tim at the appropriate time and get your question answered. If you have questions that come up after tonight's presentation, two things. The presentation will be put on the MEDCO website for you to listen to in its entirety at another time, or if you have other people in your organization that you would like to hear the presentation, you can do that anytime you wish. Or also feel free to contact your MEDCO sales representative, customer service, and or obviously any of the U.S. Chemical representatives in your area to answer questions. So with that, Tim, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks very much. I would like to also thank MEDCO for the opportunity. This is a great way to reach a number of people on an ongoing basis. I'm pretty excited to be part of it. I wanted to first preface this, but I've been in the industry many, many years, and I, like so many of you at the jobber level, I have been a little bit misguided over the years about body fillers and putties and hardeners and how they all work. And tonight is just going to be an overview of what we call the good, better, best approach on fillers, and where the mid-range and or the high-end fillers may be a better fit for some of the shops who think they might want the low-end, low-cost fillers to begin with. So we basically have titled this, our low-end fillers really. A cheap body filler is really cheap. And Mark, I'm having a hard time with the. Hang on just a second. I can't get it to advance. Mark, you there?
You should be able to just hit your down screen.
Yep, that's what I'm doing. It's
down arrow?
Anything. Yep. It is not doing it, sir. Hang on just a second. Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. So again, we're going to explore whether cheap body fillers are really, in fact, cheap. The one question we get all the time in the field, and I think any filler manufacturer will get the same types of question, is, why do we have so many choices? And I'm going to tell you, it kind of drives us crazy too. It seems like there's always been a lot of different labels of a lot of different products that, at the end of the day, essentially do the same thing. Now, I liken this to the automobile industry. I mean, there are entry-level imports and there are luxury cars. They'll all get you down the road, but there's certainly things about them that will distinguish them from each other and certainly justify the difference in cost. A lot of times there's regional preferences in certain parts of the country or in certain markets. For example, within our line, we have a line called Base Coat Clear Coat, red label, black lettering. It's been around for many years. And it's very popular in a couple of different parts of the country, and you take the label to other parts of the country, and they haven't seen it in 10 or 15 years. A lot of times it's just technicians not willing to change habits. Sometimes it's jobbers not willing to change habits. They figure, hey, it's selling. Nobody's complaining about it. I don't need anything else. Don't need anything new. A lot of times it's driven by technicians who want something different. I like this filler, but I like to be a little bit thicker. I like a little bit thinner. I like the sand easier. I like to have better vertical hold. There's a lot of different things that go into fillers that can influence what we make on the manufacturing end. Sometimes it's manufacturers that are guilty of reacting to a competitive offering. Somebody comes out with a supposed better mousetrap, it puts some pressure on other manufacturers to go ahead and try and react to it. So all the manufacturers, I think body filler companies and a lot of manufacturers in our industry are pretty much guilty of coming out with a lot of new things and not eliminating some of the older technology or some of the older SKUs. I think you'll see that changing in the next couple of years. I think we're going to be looking at downsizing some of the offering and trying to consolidate some of the manufacturing process too. Once in a while, we do actually get new resin technology. It doesn't happen very often, but probably happened the last time pretty recently. We'll get into that with a couple of our new products in the next few minutes. And oftentimes, a lot of times, just marketing. New and improved idea, new and improved concept. Sometimes we change a color, change a resin, change a formula, and decide to go ahead and market it as something different. This is an area where I get myself in trouble sometimes with the company, but really we're not building a really technically advanced product here. If people knew what was really in the can, you'd be amazed at how simple the technology really is. There's about 7 or 8 ingredients that make up most body fillers: liquid resin, and talc powder, and adhesion promoter, some solvent, and then we have what we call glass beads or glass bubbles. Microspheres was the name introduced many years ago. So in a way, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that our product is significantly different than our competitors, because essentially I believe, and I do believe, that we're basically all baking the same cake. There's very little in the way of secrets in our industry. Nobody really has a leg up on anybody else. Lightweight fillers have been around for 30, 35 years, and they really still are the core choice for the collision industry and the retail trade as well. Tonight, we're going to talk mostly about the approach that we use in our approach at U.S. Chemical, and that's we talked a good, better, best concept. There's 8 or 10 labels that we manufacture, but they all can fall within 3 categories. There's the entry-level commodity-type fillers. There's the mid-range, moderately priced fillers that are a step up from the commodities, but certainly don't have the resin quality or the sanding characteristics of some of the better products. Then there's true premium high-end fillers that really do utilize a different type of resin, different type of technology that differentiates themselves from the others. We're going to talk about each one of them separately and go through the advantages and disadvantages of each category. On the entry-level commodity fillers, about the only advantage out there is the price. These are the down and dirty, cheapo, entry-level, sell it to me for $15 a gallon type mud that often includes very old technology, some of the original resin formulations that were made 30, 35 years ago, and really haven't been changed a lot over the years. They're cheap, and for people who focus strictly and totally on price, there's several of them out there to be available. I mean, we make 2 or 3 of them, and as does everybody else. I can tell you right now, nobody that touches this stuff makes any money with it, including us, including the jobbers, and ultimately including the shops as well. We'll get into that here in the next few minutes as well. The disadvantages of entry-level commodity fillers include, number one, it's harder to work with. They generally are stiffer. They don't spread on as well. They don't go on as smoothly. They get rock hard and are usually much harder to sand, especially if they sit overnight or longer. They're a bit more porous than a lot of our more modern resin counterparts, meaning that if you ever put on body filler and then put the first coat of primer on, you can see it acts like a sponge. It really absorbs some of that solvent and some of that primer into the filler. And none of the entry-level commodity fillers, and I can't emphasize this enough, none of them are stain-resistant or stain-free. And body filler staining still occurs today. It was more prevalent, I believe, probably in the 80s and 90s when base coat clear coat technology was evolving. And it is a chemical reaction between the solvents and the resins in the clear coat and the clear activators, and the hardeners and the resins in the body filler. It is a completely spontaneous reaction. I've had bodymen tell me that they've never had it happen to them. I've had bodymen tell me that they didn't have it for 20 years, and all of a sudden it happened twice in 4 months. You really cannot tell when it's going to rear its ugly head. And what I'm talking about, for those of you that may not know, is on a white, a silver, or a light metallic vehicle, anywhere where there's body filler applied will turn into a yellow color underneath the paint film. And you really cannot eliminate it. It needs to be repainted and or redone completely. And all the money you save by using a cheap body filler, you've just given away in a redo. So commodity fillers are used a lot in the retail market, the do-it-yourself market, because of the price point. Some of your national brands, do-it-yourself stores, they sell mostly and almost exclusively the entry-level commodity-type fillers for their customer base. Any type of production work, any type of efficiencies, any type of a busy shop, you'll find them, for the most part, I hope, not using the commodity-type filler because they're really not being as productive as they could be. So we're going to get into why would we ever want to use or step up or upgrade to a better type filler. The mid-range fillers or the premiums are generally easier to apply. They will go on easier. They will go on more smoothly with a little less effort. They are certainly easier to sand in pretty much every category, every brand across the board. You get into a mid-level resin or a premium resin, and you're going to see a noticeable difference in the way the product sands, or what I call burns down. The technicians can burn it down a lot faster and get the job done that much faster. It's got a little bit tighter build to it. It's got different microspheres, smaller microspheres that make the product less porous and create fewer pinholes. More advanced technology, and again, less staining. Now, I say better. Keep in mind the better in the good, better, best scenario is the mid-range product. I say less staining because you can still have a mid-range product like a Z-grip, like a Fusion, like an X-grip. I've still seen them stain occasionally from time to time, even though the occurrence is much less and much less often than with the commodity. They're more economical to use, and we'll get into that in just a minute, meaning that it costs more to buy it at point of purchase, but it is more economical to use, and we'll get into that right now. I mentioned before, commodity fillers are much more difficult to work with on application. They don't go on as easily. They're harder to get smooth, and they're harder to sand. Another feature of the commodity fillers, again, using 25 or 30 or 35-year-old resin technology, is that there is a there's a tackiness that'll float to the top of commodity fillers, and even though they're marketed as being tack-free, I can tell you that all the commodities I've seen, I work with, including ours, will generally load up the first piece of paper that you try and cut it with. So the analogy I use is that, okay, you spend $15 or $18 for a cheap gallon of body filler. That will do, typically in a shop these days with a lot more sheet metal being replaced, 1 gallon of filler will typically do 10 or 12 jobs in a shop. And if you're going to burn up another piece of 80 grit file board paper, just by getting the tack off of every job at $1 to $1.25 a sheet, it's going to be somewhere between 12 and 15 bucks of additional sandpaper used for each gallon of that commodity filler that's purchased. So by the time you add all that up, my theory is, and what I teach people is, that you've already paid for at least a mid-range product. Go ahead and buy it and go ahead and use it. Not to mention the labor savings and just the general headache and brain damage that using a commodity filler can produce for you. So, again, just to recap, typically a gallon of filler in today's shops are going a lot further. You can use it on 10 to 12 jobs. You're going to burn up more sandpaper, probably one more sheet per application at $1 to $1.25 a sheet. So again, it's about a $15 savings over the. You're already paying for the upgraded filler, so you might as well go ahead and buy it and use it. So mid-range fillers again, and I illustrated two of ours as an example. We consider our Fusion and our Pro Gold ES to be a mid-range filler. They are generally stain resistant, and there's a difference between stain-free and stain-resistant. Again, it has everything to do with the resin quality. And most of the mid-range fillers on the market, ours and our competitors, are stain-resistant resins in the mid-range offering. They are significantly easier to sand than the commodity fillers. They are creamier and therefore go on smoother than the commodity fillers. And most of them are what I call moderately priced, with a street price at the job from the jobber, typically in the $30 to low 30s price range. So they're probably $10 to $12 to $15 a gallon more than a commodity, but they're probably a good $10 to $15 a gallon less than a premium, maybe even more. The disadvantages, if there are some in the mid-range offering, include that a lot of times we're still not talking about the best quality resin. It's certainly a step up from the commodities, but it's not always the best resin available. Again, this type of technology, this type of product, whether it be in our brand or anybody else's, will occasionally stain. Doesn't happen near as often, but it can happen. And they sand better, but sometimes they're often not the absolute best sanding characteristics. And again, this goes back completely and totally to the quality of the resin used in the manufacturing process. Mid-range fillers are generally the most popular category among most collision shops. A definite step up from the commodity, but not breaking the bank in cost. Again, when you compare it to a premium at $50 plus, a lot of shops don't want to spend that much, but they're willing to settle for and compromise a good product at a good price as opposed to the low-end commodity stuff. So while this is an improvement, there is still yet a better option, and that would obviously be the premium or high-end fillers that really everybody has. Every brand has them out there. Everybody knows who they are. And I will tell you, I mentioned earlier that there are some advances in resin technology, and we at U.S. Chemical, and I think a couple of our competitors in the last few months have come across a new, a better mousetrap. And with ours, the AU79 product we're actually employing a completely different glass bubble or microsphere into that technology that is smaller in size. And if you can picture those little plastic beads, that's what kind of holds the whole thing together. It acts like a glue. It'll also make the application process, the spreading of the product, much smoother and much easier to go on. It goes on more like a putty, yet you get the fit, the build, and the vertical hold that you need in a filler sometimes. So premium high-end fillers, again, employ the best resins available. The most advanced formulation with the best microspheres. They are much easier to work with, significantly easier to sand, and generally stain-free. And again, not stain-resistant, but stain-free. About the only disadvantage on the high-end fillers, depending on the type of shop or the type of customer you're dealing with, is that it does have a significantly higher cost than most of the other fillers. So these are premium high-end fillers that are going to retail in the $50 plus range. And you'll find them mostly used by what I call the DRP shops or the insurance shops who are going to use premium fillers due to the additional efficiency and speed, where they consider time as money more than maybe a smaller shop or a do-it-yourselfer or somebody that's more, cost conscious. So that's kind of the rundown. Now it's talking about one more thing, talking about premium fillers and why the argument for premiums or even a mid-range. It's going to be the best technology, as I mentioned earlier. They're going to be much easier to apply, much easier to work with. And I look at it as an insurance policy against staining. A typical shop, even a big shop today, the consumption of body filler is down significantly where it was 10 years ago. With the labor rates increasing and the sheet metal prices dropping, a lot of times people are just replacing panels and no longer fixing what we used to fix 10 years ago. So I found that most shops are consuming between 30 and 40 gallons of filler a year. If you look at the cost difference per gallon between going from a commodity to a premium, that shop might spend upwards of $700 a year more on a premium filler as opposed to a commodity. If you end up with one redo, one repaint, one redo, one job that you got to do over during the course of that year, you probably can't do that for $700. So I always try and sell this as an insurance policy. Again, if your cost difference is $30 a gallon, and you're going to use that gallon on 10 to 12 jobs, it's for $2 for $2 to $3 a car, you're buying a really nice insurance policy that you're not going to have any failure in that category. So hopefully this makes some sense. So again, our cheap body filler is really cheap. All right, and I will tell you that from a former jobber's perspective, I owned and managed jobber stores for 25 years before I went to work for U.S. Chemical. And I will tell you that, the cost of doing business hasn't changed. In fact, it's increased quite a bit. I call a lot of these products the race to zero. I see body filler seems to be selling for less these days than it did 5 years ago, and clear coats seem to be selling for less. So everybody's being pinched for profitability right now. My theory is, would you rather deliver a $16 a gallon of Bondo and make $5 on it, or would you want to deliver a $30 a gallon of filler and make twice that much? Profit is not a dirty word. I know what it takes to spin the key in the front door every day. And like I said, those expenses have not decreased. They've increased significantly over the last few years, and we're all being pinched for profit. So get in the habit of talking about this with your customers. Upgrade them to the better offering, and I think you'll find life is easier, and you probably make a few more bucks, put a few more bucks in your pocket as well. We're going to get into putties at this point in time. And again, very similar to the fillers, there's a lot of choices driven by different market demands, much of the same reasons I covered earlier. Again, there's very subtle differences between major brands and products within our group, for example. I know in ours, and I believe this is probably the case for some others, you can intermix any of our filler products with our finishing putties. And body men tend to want to create their own viscosity, and will change the viscosity depending on temperature and different working conditions. You can take any of our fillers and mix them with any of our putties to create the product that you'd like to see from as far as from a viscosity standpoint. There's typically 4 types of putties that we talk about. And the body filler, we talk about good, better, best. On the finishing putty, we've got, it really is all about viscosity. Normal viscosity would be a product like our icing, been around for many years. It's a staple product for us. Some guys like that particular technology. They want it a little bit thinner. ProGlaze would be, more like our competitors 416, for example. It's a pretty popular product as well. A little bit thinner viscosity. The flexible putty, again, every shop should have at least one jug of this laying around for flexible bumpers, bumper inserts, and anything that's flexible. It does make a difference when the stuff kicks. This is significantly more flexible than either icing or ProGlaze or any of the normal putties. And then if you've got a smaller shop, if you do a lot of walk-in business for your jobber store, and you got a guy that's maybe on a budget, we have a product called Halftime that we've basically done the mixing for you. It literally is 50% filler and 50% putty. And for a guy that's got a $50 bill and doesn't want to have both products in the garage or can't afford to have both of them, that's a great alternative to get him started. So again, what's the real difference? It has everything to do with, and finishing putty has everything to do with viscosity, the plastic bead or bubble employed, higher grades of resin, better holdout for paint job. You'll see less dieback, and putties are generally finer sanding. And obviously the cost, if you look at a cost per ounce, putties are significantly more expensive than fillers. I'm going to talk about hardeners and mixing for a minute, because this is something that I tell you what, it's one of the most overlooked areas in our industry by jobbers and technicians alike. A lot of technicians will tell you I got 20 years experience, but doesn't mean they're doing it right. And I'm sure we've all run into those personalities. Any resin-based repair material needs to be mixed at a full 2% ratio, never less. I'd rather see it be closer to 2.5 or 2.7% than anything less than 2%, and we'll get into why in just a minute. When you apply the product with a spreader, you need to be applying it with firm pressure. Part of your job as a technician is to drive that product into the sand scratches and to ensure proper adhesion. And a lot of times guys want to slap it on there, especially if they're doing a large area, and they're more worried about shaping it than they are getting it into the crevices. These products are really designed to be layered and put on in multiple coats. Anybody puts it on full thickness with one application is probably not doing it right, and it's going to end up with more pinholes, because part of the pinhole elimination process is the way you put it on. If you apply firm pressure and put it on in coats, you talk to any body man that does that, and you'll hardly ever hear him talk about pinholes. And then I'm going to tell you something else that I learned that this is an interesting point. Metal spreaders will go on and reduce pinholes over plastic spreaders. And the reason for that real quickly is the fact that metal spreaders won't flex quite as much. When you've got a board full of body filler and you're spreading it, you got your fingers behind it. Typically in the middle of the spreader, the edges of the spreader want to curl up, and you're not getting even pressure on that when you're applying that product. Metal spreaders don't flex as much, and you end up putting on more pressure on the product as it goes on. So hopefully that makes sense. Now we're going to get into the last segment of the fillers and putties tonight, and that is the hardener, the cream hardener, that ends up being really the most important part of the equation. There is, on every tube manufactured, there is a date stamp code on the crimped end of the tube. This is something that's overlooked by pretty much everybody in the industry. You've got 1 year after manufacture to use that cream hardener. When I was growing up in the industry, it used to be, okay, if the hardener was crunchy, it was no good, don't use it. It takes years for the hardener to get to that point. But after 1 year, the hardener will start changing inside the tube, and you'll see some peroxide leach out through the tube, and it basically equates to almost the same as having a mixing toner on a mixing bank on your paint machine that you don't stir. It just sits there for a week or two, then you pour it off, and you get some clear resin at the top. Very similar for the hardener. You want to make sure the hardener is kneaded. You want to squeeze it in your fingers and make sure you just kind of mix it before you take the cap off. But outdated cream hardener is the absolute #1 cause of issues when it comes to resin-based repair materials. The fourth bullet point there is about saving old hardeners. It's just something that I just kind of laugh at. I go around the shops, and I typically see a bodyman that's got either a drawer in his toolbox or a Tupperware container or a cardboard box, and he's got 7, 8, 9, 12 old tubes, half-used tubes of hardener that he's got some emotional attachment that he can't get rid of them. And I always ask him, what's the attachment? And they can never answer the question. But what I tell people is when you throw the empty can away or you throw the empty plastic container of filler of putty away, find the corresponding hardener and throw it away at the same time, because the old hardener will not work properly. and it'll result in under-catalyzed product, soft film, and possible splitting or cracking when it's put out and after it's painted for a week or two. One more thing about hardeners I want to mention is that there's really no difference whatsoever chemically between red hardener, white hardener, blue hardener, purple hardener, doesn't matter what color it is. There was an old urban legend years ago that red hardener would stain more, and that was completely false. A lot of people would order blue hardener because they had the psychological benefit of not having it stained, but there is no truth to that. It doesn't matter what color the hardener is. It's food coloring, basically. It's all BPO or benzoyl peroxide hardener, and it doesn't matter what color it is. You will not increase or decrease your chance of staining by changing the color of the hardener. So in summary of the fillers, again, sometimes paying more for a product at initial purchase time will cost less in the long run. There are real, true differences between grades and qualities of product, and we reviewed those tonight. I think it's an opportunity for you to educate your customers and upsell and improve your business, improve your profitability. Proper mixing and application is absolutely crucial and for success in all resin-based products. And then fresh cream hardener should be used for the best results. I know at most jobber stores, the cream hardeners are thrown into a big cardboard box underneath the counter and very rarely rotated. So that's something that you might want to go back and check behind your counter when you go to work in the morning and maybe eliminate a problem down the road. So that's it for this section. I appreciate your time and attention, and then we'll just, I think, wait a minute, and then we'll move into the Spray Max session as well. Thank you. Mark, we there?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. I think we're on time. I'm going to go ahead and switch the presentations.
Okay.
Okay. Ready to go, or you want to take a break, or should we just keep on going?
No, keep going, please.
Okay, cool. All right, the second half of the presentation tonight is a product line called SprayMax, and we are the exclusive distributor for SprayMax in North America, and we've been so for many years. I was telling Mark earlier on the phone that SprayMax is a line that, quite candidly, it took all of us at U.S. Chemical probably 3 or 4 years to really learn and understand how to sell this line. It is really a unique animal. And when I first saw it, I was skeptical. Coming out of the jobber business, we had aerosols and aerosol choices that were just rampant. And I saw this and said, okay, well, what's the big deal? It's just another spray can line. And all I could say is, boy, was I wrong. Okay. The funny thing is, aerosols are kind of like a dirty little secret in our industry. You walk into shops and you talk about aerosols or spray cans, and the first thing they're going to tell you is, well, we don't use them here. But you walk around any shop in the country, and you'll pick up 20, 30, 50, or 60 cans out of the body shop and the paint shop, and for a product that they supposedly do not use at all. It's almost comical. But when you get into the what is an aerosol, technically and scientifically, it can be defined as a system of solid or liquid particles suspended in a gaseous environment, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares what an aerosol is, but I tell you what it is. It's a moneymaker. This is a system that we're going to go through tonight, and I will show you that it is an entire system. It is a small damage repair system that, put in the proper hands with the proper training, can really make some serious money for the people that embrace it. It is a good profit center for both the jobber and the shop, and it's not designed strictly for the walk-in customers. It has a place in the professional body shop as well. So, aerosols have always been looked at, like I said, always been considered a second-class application process, second-class approach. But you walk into a decision-maker's office to discuss aerosols, you might as well stay standing. It's going to be a short conversation. No body shop is going to admit to or advertise that they use aerosols to repair vehicles. but as we said earlier, they all do it. So what happens when you walk into a decision maker's office and ask them what they're doing to increase their customer pay repairs, or ask them what they're doing how they're increasing their cycle time with the one spray booth they have, for example. We have a complete small damage system that will keep you compliant with the EPA. This entire system is 6H exempt and 6H compliant. It'll still allow you to work effectively on the floor of your shop and not have to have everything tied up in a booth or a prep station. You talk about increasing cycle time. It's amazing what can happen here. SprayMax, and I'm assuming most of the jobbers that are on the line are somewhat familiar with it. I know when I had my store, my last business, it was a peripheral line for us, but I never really dove into it. It was something that I just had because people seemed to want it, seemed to work well, and I didn't get any complaints about it. I will tell you that the biggest thing about SprayMax is, and I cannot emphasize this enough, we have the only aerosol catalyzed two-component delivery method in the industry. Again, I'm going to repeat that for those of you that might not have heard it my first time. It's catalyzed. It's real paint. It's two-component technology in an aerosol delivery system. It truly is unique. In addition to that, we have the ability to fill cans at the jobber store, just like you might do with some other brands now. But again, we're the only ones in the world that have the ability to fill two-component. For example, Imron, any acrylic urethane, any catalyzed material that you would normally mix and put through a spray gun, you now have the ability and the option to put it into an aerosol delivery method. Opens up a lot of excitement, a lot of possibilities for expanded business with people that do a mobile touch-up repair, fence companies, a lot of industrial applications where you go out to a job site and you need a quality finish instead of just something you can run down to Home Depot and get. It really does create some opportunities for anybody who will take the time to learn it and embrace it. It's a beautiful system. One of the other features about the technology is what we call our variator nozzle. This is a nozzle that will not only spray horizontally or vertically, which I think a lot of aerosols do today, but we're the only one on the market where you can change the spray pattern. It's just like a spray gun. You can go from about a 2 to 2.5 inch pattern, open it up to about a 5-inch pattern. And the pattern you get is exactly what you see on the screen. It resembles the same shape and configuration as a spray gun. And the atomization, the droplet size and the atomization is about a 1.0 Sada mini jet. That's really what we benchmark it against. So when you open up these cans and start spraying them, you're going to see a significant difference in the aerosol technology compared to what you're used to at spray cans. So where does it fit, in the shop level? These are pictures of a vehicle that I believe one of the SprayMax people took in for an estimate, and there's a bumper scuff, and both mirrors have been rubbed, probably a teenage driver. So, and the estimate on this repair at the body shop was almost $1,200 to fix these three components. The repair was done in the shop. The first picture on the left is the first coat of clear. The second picture is the bumper. Then the third picture is after the second coat of clear coat applied to the mirror. In less than 1 hour, all three of these repairs were done using about $38 in materials. So you talk about a moneymaker. For any body shop right now, any of your customers that are farming out small damage repair, farming out the lease return vehicle touch-up, or somebody is leasing a car after 3 years and they got some scratches and they want to bring it back and get it fixed before the leasing company dings them for a big deficit. It's a great opportunity for the shop to pick up some good revenue stream and some incredible profit opportunity. Again, how do you go from $1,200 to $38? I mean, it's significant. Okay. Again, how many repairs can you afford not to do with this system if you're looking for for more profitability and more revenue stream in your shop? I know in Phoenix we did a seminar. We had a silver PT Cruiser that we plucked out of the parking lot and did the entire repair on this silver bumper in front of about 55 people in less than an hour, start to finish. And the customer whose car it was drove it home that night, and needless to say, his wife was happy that the bumper finally got fixed. So, but I've done white pearl, I've done silver, gold. Doesn't make any difference. This next slide I'm going to talk about now. This is actually a flyer that I have available. That if anybody out there wants it, I can certainly email it to them, and I'll put my contact information on the next slide. But this is a flyer that I customize with your logo or your name in the upper right-hand corner, along with your phone number. And all it is just a step-by-step guide on how the SprayMax system works. The car in the pictures was actually a Ford Taurus that belonged to my boss in Ohio. It was actually his rental car that we pulled into the shop, and the rental car had a couple of scratches on the front bumper, so we went ahead and took the bumper down and did the job for free, and I don't think Hertz ever knew about it. But we did this job on a gold Ford in about an hour and 20 minutes, start to finish, and you can see step by step we prep it. The prep and the masking and everything else is identical to whatever you do with a spray gun. Nothing is different. It's the only thing that changes here is the delivery method for the paint and the clear. We spot primed it. We sanded the primer. We applied the base coat, blended the base coat, tacked it, cleared it, and then blended the clear to the left-hand side of the license plate there in figure number 7. We burned the edge of the clear in, and then we ran the clear on the other side, the driver's side, all the way out to the end near the wheel well. So we burned in the front of the bumper, and we ran it to the edge of the wheel well area as well. Again, less than an hour and a half, start to finish, and we did use a heat gun on the primer in between. There's no shame in cheating. To become more productive, have a heat lamp ready or a heat gun handy to flash the primer, and you'll find that the process goes a whole lot faster. But again, this flyer is available. I will certainly make it available to anybody who wants it. It's very easy to drop your name or your logo in the upper right-hand corner and be able to pass them out and make them available for your customers as well. So I'm going to move to the, if anybody wants to copy this down, that's my email address. Just email me or email anybody at MEDCO, and they will we'll make arrangements to get this to you if it's something you feel you could use for your store. We're happy to do it. So, okay, let's get into a little bit about who buys it to SprayMax. It's I mentioned earlier, shops right now are looking to create more revenue streams. Maybe some of the stuff they used to farm out, they're now doing in-house. Maybe they're keeping it in-house and doing it themselves, and keeping that profit, creating a new profit center for themselves. On the clear coat, the 2K clear has a huge advantage when you're jamming parts. Typically right now in a body shop with multiple painters, especially a larger shop, there could be as many as 2 or 3 different people jamming parts twice a day. And every one of them's got to go in the mixing room, mix a little bit of clear, usually too much. If they're going to use 4 ounces, they'll mix 6 and throw 2 or 3 ounces away. And then they're going to burn up a PPS cup in doing so. They're going to have to take the time to clean their spray gun afterwards, even if it's just 3 or 4 minutes. Time is money. And if you look at you do a true cost analysis on parts jamming, any of the time motion studies for the insurance industry or iCar will tell you that it costs about $37 for the parts jamming process for 2 panels. And that's pretty well documented by a number of people. So my theory is you take a can of the clear, you pop it in the morning, you activate it in the morning, use it to jam your first 2 panels, and then you turn it upside down, you flush out the nozzle, you clean it out, and you put it next to the scale inside the mixing room. And a couple hours later, when somebody else needs to jam a part, instead of having to go back and remix the clear and go through all that labor, repetitive motion over again, they take the same can of clear that's now activated, shake it, and then they use it right away. There's no more duplication of cleaning the gun. That way they'll use the entire can. If it's a busy shop, they'll have no problem using that entire can, because once you activate it, the pot life on the Glamour Clear is a full 48 hours. So you've got 2 days to work that clear once you activate it. And the reason why it works that way and it lasts so long is that because it's a sealed container. These are all packaged under a nitrogen blanket, and there's no humidity, no moisture, no air inside the can. And so even once it's activated, your pot life is 4 to 6 times longer than it would be in a conventional spray gun. Living in Phoenix, we have some pretty hot conditions, and I will tell you that I've used that product fully into the second day with no issues at 100 degrees. And in the cold weather, I've used it into the third day with really no issues as well. So every pot life we put on the can is an absolute minimum pot life, and this one happens to be 48 hours. So for parts jamming, the clear is an absolute no-brainer. It'll save the shop a lot of money, and it'll save the painters a lot of time. If they're doing their own recon work, their own used car work, a lot of times they farm this out, and again, because of the economy, people are now looking for different revenue streams, and they're looking for ways to keep that work in-house and retain that profit. Mobile repair companies that need a quick and effective solution. Again, this is a fully mobile, fully compliant system. They're not going to get in trouble with anybody spraying out in the parking lot if they just use common sense. Are there overspray issues? Yes, there can be. In cold weather, the overspray for this clear will travel 10 to 15 feet, and so proper masking still is required. Again, it's just common sense. You're using a urethane clear, a 2-component catalyzed urethane clear. The only thing that changes is the method of delivery. Any of the jobbers out there that have a very strong do-it-yourself base. I have a jobber up in California that has built a little touch-up kit where he includes a can of the primer, a can of the clear, a can of the blender, disposable respirator, a pair of gloves, a tack rag, a couple rolls of tape, Scotch-Brite, and sells the whole thing as a kit along with any color that you want to put in the can for like $159 out the door. And he sells quite a few of them that way. It's about a 52% profit item for him, and he's got a display of a fender that was painted with aerosols, and once people see the results, it sure beats the heck out of a pre-val unit, and plus you're getting more revenue, again, for your store by doing so. The benefits, again, it's a full system approach. It is a small damage repair system. It's not just one component here and one component there. I'll get into the products here in a minute. We've got everything from wax and grease remover down to blender and everything in between. There is no waste or cleanup. Once the can is exhausted, you simply throw it away. The entire system, again, is 6H compliant, which is in some parts of the country a very big issue right now. A lot of people are starting to see compliance issues with some of their systems and procedures. And this is a way to stay compliant and keep yourselves productive at the same time. The nozzle technology, again, allows the aerosol to perform like a spray gun. For those of you that have seen it and test-driven it, you know what I'm talking about. For the ones that haven't, I tell you, the only way you're going to believe me on this is you're going to take a can and just try it yourself. It is a truly amazing aerosol delivery system. Again, the pot life on the 2K products is 4 to 6 times longer. We have an epoxy primer, for example, where the pot life is a full 4 days. And I bring that one up simply because a lot of times in a spray booth, you'll see the painter, sometimes in a beautiful shop, in a high-end facility that has a rattle can of 1K lacquer-based self-etch primer in the booth for last-minute cut-throughs. Well, I'll tell you, there's nobody going to recommend a lacquer primer underneath anybody's base coat clear coat system. Anybody who knows anything about the paint shop knows that the best sealer in the world is epoxy technology. So what I tell people is take a can of that epoxy primer and keep it in the booth and then you can pop it on Monday and use it all week long as the perfect solution for those last-minute cut-throughs in the booth. You put a coat on the bare metal, you wait about 10 or 15 minutes, you tack it, and you paint it, just like you would a normal sealer. And it's a catalyzed epoxy technology as opposed to a 1K lacquer. A lot better foundation for a paint job, especially if you're going to warranty it. This last section is a little bit controversial. I've got some people doing this. I don't necessarily recommend it or endorse it. But in this case, you know, it would allow the body men in some situations to prep the vehicle more effectively if that's what you wanted to have happen. We've also got body men using epoxy primer underneath body filler, which, as anybody who knows body filler will tell you, the best way to apply body filler is over an epoxy primer as opposed to even bare metal. Again, very little known secret that epoxy primer is actually better substrate to put body filler on top of than bare metal. Now, I mentioned earlier the 1K or the Fill One machine at the store for the stores or for the shops that want to put their own color into these aerosol cans. Most of you might be familiar with it. If you're not, it is truly a no cleanup paint machine. There's no it's air operated. There's no manual labor involved. It's fully automatic. And basically, you put the 4 ounces of color inside the can. You close the door for 4 seconds, and it fills it automatically. There's no mess, no cleanup. We have different cans for different applications. A lot of our competitors have universal blank cans, and I will tell you that with different mixing ratios, different solid content, a lot of differences in all these paint systems, I don't see how anything can be, in fact, universal. We have about 15 different blank cans, depending on the type of product. PPG, for example, PPG waterborne will be one can. DuPont waterborne will be another. PPG solvent will be a third. So we've got different cans available, but most jobbers only need 2 to 3 to satisfy whatever paint line they have in their store. So we're not talking about an overabundance of additional inventory either. But we believe strongly that there is no such thing as a universal solution for all paint systems. So, okay. Let me see here. I'm trying to advance it. Give me 1 second here. Hold on just a second. It's not wanting to cooperate. There we go. Okay. You know, just like we talked earlier about, you have a choice in cars. You also have the same choice between aerosols and spray max. This is not a typical aerosol spray can. What you're seeing on the screen now is, in fact, what the spray pattern does look like. If you do spray out or test panels or do a spray like a white piece of butcher paper or masking paper, and ask a painter to come in and look at the spray pattern, he will tell you that came from a spray gun. The droplet size, the atomization, and everything else is identical to what you get with a top quality spray gun as well. A little bit hard to see, but on the right hand side is a typical can. It's got the variator nozzle. The ring, the color identification ring in the lower right hand corner is on every can. It tells you what color the product is inside the can. And that ring is on top of all the inventory, so it's easy to pick up. You know, at the shop, once the cap is off, you still know what's in the can by looking at the color of the ring. The variator nozzle, again, will allow you to change the spray pattern from about 2.5 inches to about 5.5 or 6 inches with the twist of a finger. It's pretty easy. So the bottom line on Spray Max is it really does create exactly the same results as a spray gun. Anything you can do in a booth with a spray gun and regular paint, you can do with Spray Max. All the flash time, all the prep time, how do you prep it? It's exactly the same as what you're used to doing now. The only thing that's different is the delivery method for the product. There is no gun or compressor needed, which means this is a fully mobile system. If you have anybody out in the field doing parking lot repairs, doing used car work out in the middle of the parking lot. It is a phenomenal system. They're gonna, and the people that I've shown it to in my market absolutely love it, and they can go anywhere right now and do anything as far as mobile touch-up repair without having to haul the generator and compressor around in the back of the van. What it is for everybody, it is a major shift in mindset. Wrapping your arms around it is probably the biggest challenge. But I will tell you that for those that have, we've got jobbers that are selling, in some cases, tens of thousands of dollars a month to the different industries, not just traditional collision shops. Light manufacturing, fence companies. There's all types of opportunities to, fleet maintenance. The ability to put Imron in a can, for example, and have it catalyzed, it opens up opportunities that we never, ever had before. And so it is truly a unique, something unique and something different in a time in an industry where we're starving for that kind of a innovative product. So I mentioned earlier there are 15 prepackaged SKUs. Then every jobber will probably need 2 to 3 SKUs in the fill can machine, depending on what kind of paint system they have. We have a plastic adhesion promoter. We have a wax and grease remover. We've got 2 different 1K primers. One's a self-etch and one's a weld-through. We've got 3 different 2-component primers. We've got the epoxy. We've got a traditional urethane, and we've got a non-ISO, or what I call a hybrid primer, which is my personal favorite. It's called the rapid primer. That's the one I use all my demos on. I take a heat gun in between and flash it, and I can put on 3 coats of primer, and I'm wet sanding it in about 6 minutes, and makes for a very quick and very effective repair. We do have a 1-component lacquer clear coat for people who still want to use that. We've got 2 different 2K clear coats. One is a rapid, spot panel clear, and one's a glamour clear for a little bit larger jobs, so complete panels. We've got an aerosol spot blender that's a world-class blender. That's not only it's not straight solvent. It's got some resin in the can as well, so you can get pretty aggressive with it, and it won't slide like solvent will. We've got 3 different trim blacks, and then we've also got an aerosol spray gun cleaner with an extended nozzle that it works both on waterborne paints and on solvent-borne paints as well. One thing about the gun cleaner I happen to do is whenever I do a demo, when I'm done doing my demo, I will take the nozzle off the product that I use, whatever product I was using for the demo, whether it be a primer or a clear or a trim black, and I'll take that nozzle off and I'll run it on top of the can of gun cleaner to basically clean the nozzle. Or as I tell people, now I'm cleaning my spray gun, and keeps the nozzles clean. So if I'm running a 2-component catalyzed primer, for example, that I can use for a couple of days on demos, I'm not going to run into a situation where some of it might have dried on the edge and clogged it to where my next demo will be a failure. So I use that, I show that all the time as a way to clean the spray nozzles as well. It's a very minimal investment for a shop or a jobber to get started. And again, I can't emphasize enough, any job, anywhere can be done with top quality, professional results that you're used to seeing out of a body shop. And it can be done anywhere by literally anybody. It's extremely easy to use and very, very low learning curve. So with that, Mark, I didn't see any questions. I think we're in good shape, and I think we're on time. I appreciate it.
Actually, we have 2 questions from the audience, Tim.
Okay, go ahead.
The first, as long as we're on SprayMax, is the UV package that's in the clear appropriate for, I guess, the longevity that a customer would expect when using a name brand paint?
Sure, and that's a great point. Let me just, I'll address that real simply. What you got to understand, I didn't touch upon this, and I probably should have. SprayMax is not a paint company. They are simply an aerosol. They are one of the largest aerosol companies in the world. They're based in Germany, and they do a tremendous amount of private label for all the major coatings companies in the world. AXO, PPG, BASF, DuPont, they do a lot of private label for a lot of people. All the products in their system are from world-class, top-shelf manufacturers. I'm privy to some of them, and I know, for example, I know what clear is in the Glamour Clear, and it is a top-shelf European product with a solid content pushing 40-42%. I've done dry film build tests with the clear. If I'm doing something myself, like a mirror or something that's going to see any horizontal sunlight, especially here in Phoenix, I'll put on 3 coats. I'm not going to put on more than that. I don't need more than that. Being a 42 or 42% solids with all the standard UV screeners that you would find in for example, a Spies Hecker Clear, without saying the word. So yeah, it's the real deal. This is not cheap generic bathtub type material. This is all plucked from the finest systems in the world that SprayMax employs and does all their private labeling for. So they contract with the paint manufacturer to be able to use that product in their label, and that makes it part of their system. So yeah, it's the real deal. No, there's no question about it.
Okay, our second question goes back to the body filler presentation.
Okay.
What do you recommend as the best filler option or best procedure on larger bare metal surfaces?
If you've got an area, here's what I tell people, and this is something that it's really hard to adhere to because people generally don't want to hear it. I will tell you that it is anytime you apply body filler in an area of more than about 1.5 square feet at one time, you're probably not going to do it correctly. And what I mean by that is you simply are going to run out of time. Everybody who's mixed body filler knows that once you mix it, depending on ambient temperature, you've got anywhere between 30 or 40 seconds up to maybe 2 minutes to work it before it starts stiffening up. If you're trying to do let's say an entire tailgate or half a bedside or an entire door in one application, you're probably going to fail because, again, you're not going to be applying it with the amount of pressure that you need to apply it properly. I tell people on a large job, be prepared to do it in stages. Work this section first. One thing about body filler and about polyester resins is that they will always stick to themselves. You'll never have a problem getting body filler to stick to body filler. But again, so larger areas are where we see a lot of questions about adhesion and pinholes, because you're probably more concerned about getting it off the mixing board onto the car in time before it starts to kick, and you're probably not going to apply the correct amount of pressure or work the body filler like it needs to be worked to remove all the pinholes and other imperfections. So larger areas are certainly a problem. If it's a really if it's a much larger area, or even a complete, for example, I would absolutely put the vehicle in epoxy primer before I put body filler down the bare metal on a large area. You just get so much better adhesion. The other advantage to priming it first is you can really see what you got, and maybe give you a chance to go back and rework some of the metal before you apply the filler to minimize the film build on the filler when you do apply it. But I'm going to say it's virtually impossible to do more than 3 square feet at once without sacrificing something in the equation, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. All right. Well, Tim, I certainly appreciate your time tonight. I think it's very informative, very helpful. And most of all, obviously, for those who tuned in to listen tonight, we really appreciate your time and your support of MEDCO University, and we will look forward to getting you a new topic for next month out as soon as possible. Thank you very much, and as always, be aware that you can tune in to MEDCO website, the Mount 3 site, and tonight's presentation should be posted, I would imagine, by noon tomorrow. So for those of your organization that couldn't participate, you'll be able to show it to them, or if you find that you need to go back and pick up on some of the reference points, you'll be able to do that. So again, thank you very much. We appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you soon.
You bet. Thank you.